The situation between the U.S. and Venezuela has escalated. On November 24th, Washington officially recognized President Nicolas Maduro and his inner circle as members of a foreign terrorist organization. Daniil Diomin will tell us what's happening around this country.
More than 12.5 warships and 15,000 American soldiers are already in the Caribbean basin. The Pentagon is flexing its muscles, and Donald Trump is receiving the authority to strike Maduro's infrastructure, even though this is not explicitly stated in legal terms. Despite the escalation, polls show that 70% of Americans are against a military operation in Venezuela, and 76% believe that the position of the U.S. administration is unclear to them.
Venezuela is a country with the largest proven oil reserves in the world, even more than Saudi Arabia. That's the first thing. Second, Venezuela is essentially a foothold for China and Russia on the Latin American continent. Furthermore, Venezuela is threatening another country, Guyana, which is nearby and also produces oil. And by a strange coincidence, it is American companies that are extracting oil there.
Back in the spring, on April 9th, Maduro declared a state of economic emergency. He accused the United States of waging economic warfare and granted himself broad powers, ranging from suspending taxes to using state funds outside the budget. At that time, official Caracas was focused on survival, but just a few months later, the rhetoric changed.
So we know that our esteemed former president, Donald Trump, whenever the issue of oil arises in conversation, immediately has this almost automatic reflex, which is closely connected to the fact that the Americans have set themselves the goal of controlling as much energy in the world as possible, including first and foremost oil. And that is precisely why, of course, the situation we currently observe and witness around Venezuela immediately arises when quite suddenly it turns out that Venezuela is actually the largest supplier of illegal drugs to the United States and not, as many might have previously believed, neighboring Colombia.
On October 11th, Maduro announced the imminent attack by the United States in the Caribbean Sea and the largest deployment of American forces in 30 years. Aircraft carriers, submarines, F-35 jets, MQ-9 Reapers, Marines, and Special Forces. Venezuela is putting its army on full combat alert.
To fight drug trafficking, they first sent a fleet, 7 destroyers, 1 submarine, and destroyers armed with tomahawks. Maduro started to suspect that this was a bit much for just fighting drugs.
Against this backdrop, Caracas turns to its main partners. Maduro sent letters to Putin and Xi Jinping. He asked for defensive radars, fighter jet repairs, and even missiles. A Russian military Il-76 arrives in the country. Analysts note that Moscow is interested in preserving Maduro's regime, although its real capabilities are much more limited than before.
There he began mobilization, asking for help from Russia and China. They won't be able to help with anything. Venezuela actively supports Cuba, and Cuba is also a personal issue for Mr. Rubio in particular. So after Venezuela, according to this logic, the next will be Cuba, where most likely this communist regime, which is essentially sustained by Venezuela's support, will be overthrown because they supply them with oil and many other things.
On November 17th, the United States for the first time confirms its intention to designate the Cartel de los Soles as a terrorist organization. In Washington, this is explained as part of the fight against drug trafficking. But experts believe this is a way to remove legal obstacles and open the possibility for the use of force without having to appeal to Congress. At the same time, Donald Trump makes contradictory statements ranging from a willingness to negotiate with Maduro to talk of possible military intervention. Tensions continue, U.S. troops remain in the region, and Caracas seeks support from Moscow and Beijing. Meanwhile, official contacts between the countries are completely paralyzed. The region is experiencing its worst crisis in the past decade, and the further development of the situation remains unpredictable. Daniil Diomin, details, Inter TV channel, Marathon, United News.